We can make money more than our corporate jobs. Like that's one way, but there's also these side hustles, man. And like, as long as you're committed, and we didn't have kids at the time, we could make a lot of extra money. And so I put my hard hat on, went out to work. She was doing way smarter ways of making money in the house, doing 20/20 drawings. And at the end of the day, like we accumulated a lot of extra money and applied that towards our debt. And that was like the trigger of us understanding like we can increase our income. And it doesn't need to be Deloitte. It doesn't need to be Hickson. It doesn't need to be Lumbermans. We can do this.
I love talking about increasing your net worth. This is our barometer for wealth building success. Today, we're going to speak with an investor who has grown his family's net worth to over $2 million in their early 30s. Brennan Schlagbaum is our guest once again today. Brennan and his wife, Erin, live in Texas with their 2 young children. And when he's not building his family's wealth, Brennan enjoys teaching and supporting others to build wealth through his platform, Budgetdog. Welcome back to the show, Brennan.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. Great to have you back. And last time we were chatting was about how you clobbered your mortgage early. So now we're talking about building your net worth. Let's talk about that net worth growth. Looking back, what was your motivation for building your wealth originally?
Yeah, so back to 23 when we started this whole journey, and partially with the debt payoff of the house, like it wasn't really just the house. It was more so financial freedom in general. And so that was a piece of the big puzzle. And so when we started thinking about, hey, what do we really want to do with this, is not only build our wealth, but along the journey, there's this little girl called Logan Lee that came along. And as we were building that wealth, we were on pace to hit the financial freedom goal at the desired timeline. But there was a huge story in the middle. And so we had to adjust for that. And so our daughter was born with what's called Dravet Syndrome. And I raised a lot of awareness for that stuff. And one thing I noticed was it's now about her more so than financial freedom. Like, obviously we want to get to financial freedom, but it's more because we want her to be in the best health possible. And so best healthcare, my wife staying at home, all of those things were a necessity for her well-being. And what started as kind of a financial freedom fun goal, retire from the corporate world, became kind of life or death really, really quickly.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about the syndrome?
Yeah, absolutely. So Dravet syndrome is a 1 in 16,000 chance, let's call it. 1 in 16,000 kids have it. It's a form of epilepsy. And a lot of this comes down to developmental delays, motor skill delays, anything you could think of, walking, talking, maturity, like all of those things it can impact. So, a lot of the children at this point in stage, let's call them 18, 19, 20 years old, are going to live at home for their whole life. And so it kind of depends, obviously, on the spectrum that they fall on, because everybody's on a different spectrum. And there's all forms of things that could potentially happen. I think there's a lot of things with that specific Dravet syndrome people don't understand out in the public, and nor should they, because we didn't know either, before this happened. We are very positive about it, but there's also a lot of challenges that go into that. So right now, as we speak, physical therapy is in my house, helping her we do OT, PT, all those types of things on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, essentially. And, it's hard to explain to the average mind of like the things in the daily, tasks that happen, but like we can't give her baths all the time because like the excitement could like rile up a seizure. We can't do the normal things that you would think of. And this isn't like a whining session by any means. It's just the reality of like what our life has changed to. And so we have to like adjust to those things, make sure that we're on pace to give her the right healthcare and put her in the right spots essentially. And that wasn't what was in the plan initially. So when we were building this financial freedom goal, all of a sudden it was like, hey, if my wife doesn't stay at home and give her 24/7 treatment, she's not going to develop the way that we want her to and need her to. And so 0 to, let's call it 6 years old, are the critical moments of like development, as you know, with kids of your own. And so we have, it's now. We can't wait till 4 or 5 years down the road. And so a lot of this came from just that exactly. Like it was that push that you can't explain. That push that starts with a fun goal and ends with you need to do this. It's do or die. And so that's where a lot of this stemmed from, a lot of this growth of even the platform itself. And being able to do what we've done is not only fun for ourselves and needed for ourselves, but it's also fun to teach others to do the same thing. Because a lot of this stuff isn't rocket science, as you know. It's just a matter of applying the right fundamental principles to doing it the right way, and you'll build wealth with time. And so obviously the other piece of it is is income, and speed or income is speed. But if you don't have the structure, the system, or the fundamentals in play, your income, it's not as relevant as it should be. But with the right system, all of a sudden you speed this journey up in a lot quicker way. And so it's very important to focus on that as well. That's what we focus on in a big way as well.
I love that. Well, and a big part of all of that is having the motivation to want to grow your income, to build your wealth. And man, do you have that motivation in spades with your daughter's situation. I applaud you and your wife for all that you're doing. And I mean, I even think about my situation right now where build my wealth for a certain period of time, achieve some goals, and now I feel like I can kind of pull back a little bit, maybe, and not feel like I need to go to, the next level of wealth. For your situation, it's like, man, I am so motivated to build my wealth because it's going to allow us more freedom and the best resources and the best opportunities for my daughter. Is that right?
100%, man. We had to move across the country. So like we moved from Cincinnati, Ohio, Northern Kentucky area, all the way down to Texas. And so that wasn't a cheap move. That wasn't something that a lot of people could just get up and go and do. But we looked at the outcome and we said, if we don't do this, like what's the future hold? So I had to have my wife quit her job. And that was obviously a conversation we had. So she quit her job. We moved across the country. Obviously, I quit my job well before her at Deloitte and went on to, obviously run Budgetdog. And so us being in that position, we are so grateful for. But we also created that position, in a certain, obviously there's a lot of luck that comes into play. There's a lot of happenstance stuff that kind of comes into play. But at the end of the day, like we made that happen. And so I think that anybody out there, if they need to, or if they want to, they can make their situation happen. It's just a matter of applying yourself and putting yourself in the right circles of people, the right circles of influence, and making your dream come true.
Let's talk about this income growth over the years. Now, you and your wife originally started, both working before the kids came along in general. What were you doing? And then talk to us about the transition of your work situation at home and how you've grown your income.
Yeah, so it's been a lot. It's been a lot over a 7-year period. So, or let's call it a decade at this point. So we first started 22, 23 out of school, right? She was a year ahead of me. She went into the workforce. I came into the workforce right after. We were making collectively together, I want to say around $92,000 when I came out of school. So her first salary, man, I think it was, we joke about this now, looking back at it, of like how much she's grown, but it was, I want to say $32,000 in Hickson Architecture in Cincinnati, Ohio. So $32,000 there. And I obviously was still in school. So I had debt up to my eyeballs, $40,000 in student debt. And we were thinking about this. I'm like, man, we need to get this in play. So I came out of school making $50,000. She bumped to 40 at that point. So we were at $92,000 to begin. And then we were trying to pay off all this debt because that was kind of back to the story of like the house and other debts and stuff. And we're like, man, we have $304,000 of debt. How are we going to pay this off at the end of the day? And so I looked into it and I said, okay, well, we can do X, Y, and Z and do this and speed this process. And I was all over the map. Like I was looking at the whiteboard, just, that meme where you're like, they're looking at all the numbers and
yeah,
stuff.
Numbers flying at you. Yeah.
It was like me. That was like me real time. And so I was talking to my wife and I was like, we can pay this off in 12 years. And so we started looking at a trajectory and it turned into 5 years, long story short. But it was because we had a very intentional game plan. With the journey of our income growth was a lot of it was side hustles, and people don't think that side hustles are that relevant, but they are, because, we were both working corporate jobs, and a lot of people would stop there like, oh, well, I just need another raise or I just need something else. We made, I want to say roughly $30,000 in side hustle income. One year, I think it was 2017. I get my years mixed up at this point in time. I want to say it was 2017 though. With our debt payoff, we took $30,000 essentially, and don't tell the IRS this, but I think it was under the table. So that was before the $600 rule. I was doing construction. She was doing 2020 drawings, basically leveraging a skill set at her W-2. And we made a lot of extra money and we applied that all to debt, and that really sped our journey up. So we realized, okay, well, we can make money more than our corporate jobs. Like that's one way. But there's also these side hustles, man. And like, as long as you're committed, and we didn't have kids at the time, we could make a lot of extra money. And so I put my hard hat on, went out to work. She was doing way smarter ways of making money in the house, doing 2020 drawings. And at the end of the day, like we accumulated a lot of extra money and applied that towards our debt. And that was like the trigger of us understanding like we can increase our income. And it doesn't need to be Deloitte. It doesn't need to be Hickson. It doesn't need to be Lumberman's. we can do this. We started out with that entrepreneur like journey and thought the next couple of years, and we consistently increased our income. And some of it was our 9 to 5 income. Some of it was the bonuses, the raises, things like that, for sure. There was a big portion there, but a lot of it was this extra side hustle income. And a lot of that's not always taxed, like I said. And again, as a CPA, I probably shouldn't be saying that publicly, but it's just the reality of a lot of people's situation.
Sure.
And we had a big commitment to doing that. We raised our income, I want to say, from 92,000 all the way up to, I want to say, 275 within a pretty quick time frame. I want to say it was maybe 4 years total. And so we really put the pedal to the metal and just made it that happen. And I know a lot of people ask, like, well, how do you do it? Like, obviously there's a degree behind those income increases, and there's also side hustles and stuff like that. And it's not easy for everybody with kids to do what we've done. But it was just the situation we were in. We were as resourceful as we could be. And I think everybody's situation is different, but there's a lot of opportunity out there at the end of the day. And that's kind of how we kind of applied it.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the beginning, we talk about motivation, where you're currently motivated to continue to growing your wealth. Back then, what was the motivation for you? Were you working in careers that you were like not super excited about, or you wanted to see yourselves move towards a situation that might feel more free? Like, what was the motivation then?
Yeah, we wanted to be work optional. So it wasn't that we hated our careers, but we knew at 23 years old that, man, that's a long time to work till 65.
Yeah.
Doing something you don't love to do. And my wife and I thought about this, and we're like, well, we could set ourselves up by, let's call it 35 or 40, to where we're in a really good position to where we get to choose if we want to go to work. Now, knowing my wife and I, we're very like intentional and disciplined. So when we set out on a goal, they typically come a lot faster. And when we like see the end in sight, we're like, okay, well, now it's a game to get to the end goal. But so as long as you plan and you strategically plan the end goal, we know that we're going to always get it faster. So we always start with the end goal in mind, whatever that time frame is. And we always know intentionally it's going to become a lot faster. And so the big push for that was being work optional, and also realizing like Deloitte's great. Hickson was great for her. Lumberman's was great for her. But at the end of the day, like, do we really want to do that our whole life? And the answer was no. And so we wanted to get out there and do meaningful, impactful stuff. And it's led me to Budgetdog. It's led me to other things and stuff like that. And that's what we're doing today. But it's been a great journey, man.
I love it. I love it. Now people hear the term net worth, or you hear like somebody's net worth total, and they're, they want to know what that detail is. Can you talk to us about what assets you have, what liabilities you have, so people can help that understand that math?
Yeah. If I break it apart in really, really simple terms, it would be $2 million invested, and let's call it $500,000 in our personal residence. So a lot of people ask, like, is your personal residence in that? Is it not? We have paid off our house. We did move houses. We did transfer equity down to Texas. So the same situation is still present as of today. And so if I broke this down, I would say there's 4 or 5 main components to this entire thing. I'd say the most obvious thing behind this net worth growth is the stock market and real estate. I would say together 90%. So if I were to take 2.5 times 0.9, that's real estate and stocks. Mm-hmm. There's other things in the picture that we do put into the net worth piece of it, which is, let's call it cryptocurrency, a very small portion. I'm always careful when I say that. A lot of people run with that on the crypto bros on Twitter, and they and they take that a lot differently than what I'm actually intending for this to be. Kind of a very small asymmetric risk reward play is the goal there. We have HSA, I guess you could consider that kind of stock market, because that's how we use it. So crypto, HSA, private equity, other little things, individual stocks as well, which is kind of stock market as well. But we kind of position ourselves accordingly so that we continue to grow our net worth, but we also have those smaller, big growth potential vehicles, but also could go to zero vehicles in very small portions. Now, so far, based on like what we've positioned ourselves to do, all of those smaller vehicles have hit the big growth stages. Obviously, you could look at Bitcoin. You can look. Our private equity play has done very well so far, and then also the what other pieces of the puzzle have we that I left out? Crypto, private equity. Oh, multifamily real estate has been phenomenal for us. So those 3 things have been great, and we've continued to grow our net worth as a result. But that's all we do. We do very simple stuff. We don't we don't have to recreate the wheel here to build a lot of wealth.
Got it. So those alternatives or that other portion of your portfolio, it's a much smaller portion of it. A lot of it has been stock market growth and then just the general equity in your house and then the other things. Now, on the liability side, do you guys have any liabilities at this point? I know you paid off your mortgage. Are there other things that you guys... Zero. That makes it easy.
Yeah, it makes it real easy. And I know a lot of people are like big on like leveraging like real estate and stuff like that. The way we've gotten into real estate, obviously our personal residence, which we paid off, but also multifamily real estate. And so all that is essentially putting money into a fund and having an investment play out for you. So we've always done cash. We've never leveraged that. And I think that's for us personally, especially with our situation, there's enough risk in our situation already. Yeah. And between like health concerns and, other things with the business and stuff like that. So we want to like take away all other risk if we can. And that's a piece of the puzzle with the debt payoff that no one really accounted for was our situation with the health concerns and also the entrepreneurship. Like it's not easy. And there's a lot of risk that comes with that. And so in order to make that risk doable or manageable, we want to shed the risk elsewhere. And so that was a big reason we paid off the other debts as well and put ourselves in a better position long-term.
Yeah, I love that. Now you talked about having 2 children and you get to this point of personal wealth. You're probably thinking about your kids and the future and their generational wealth. Talk to us about any plans you have there.
Yeah, so I'm big on child investing, and Logan and Ellie have 3 accounts in particular. So they have a 529. We do about $250 a month there. That's going to hopefully get to about 60% of in-state 4-year school in, let's call it 18 years. So we want them to have a stake in this. Like we don't want them to just be like trust fund babies in the sense of a trust fund baby. We want them to make sure that they're working hard. They're looking for scholarships. They're putting, their foot forward as well. We do not want kids that are relying on us or like, hey, mom and dad, where's the credit card? That's not our goal here. But we also want to build a lot of wealth and put them in a good position. So 529 is the first vehicle. Second one is a parent taxable brokerage account. So this parent taxable brokerage account essentially is a regular brokerage account. It's not an UTMA or UGMA, but it's a brokerage account as the parent's name. So just a standard brokerage account. The goal behind that is that we control the money the whole entire time. If we want to down the road, we can gift them. And so that's a goal we have is to gift them some money, but we get to totally control that. We do $250 a month for each child there. And then the Roth IRA is an interesting play because obviously it takes earned income. Now, we're in a unique position where we have an online finance brand. That's the business. And we have opportunity to highlight our daughters through, let's call it gear like this on that I got on right now, and modeling for the brand and likeness and things like that. Now, I'm very careful when I talk about this because a lot of people are like, well, you can pay your kid up to $14,600 a year because that's the standard deduction. And it's really easy to not pay any tax. Well, the government's going to look at that very funny, especially if you have a 2-year-old or a 1-year-old on payroll. Like that's going to look very odd. So what I always say is reasonable wage. I think Ellie's made $50 to give you guys reference. So like she's 6 months has made, I think she had one photo shoot where we did a huge 3-hour photo shoot or whatever it was. And we applied some money towards her, but it's going to be hard to pay them any significant sum of money until they get a little older for the business where they're doing real stuff for the business outside of, let's call it baby modeling. So that's something I'm always very cautious about saying, because a lot of people run with that and they're like, well, how do I pay my kid? Can I just invest on behalf of my kid into the Roth IRA? No, you have to have earned income and it has to be justifiable. And if the IRS agent knocked on your door, would you feel comfortable? If that pit drops in your stomach, it's probably a no.
Exactly. I hear you completely. Even my kids are a bit older than yours. And even then, it's like, okay, I can get them to be podcast hosts. My daughter can help me with social media scheduling and things like that. But they still have their school lives and their soccer. And it's like, it's not like they're working 40 hours a week for dad here. It's a small amount of money.
Kids too. It's exactly. Like, okay, we want to put them in a good position.
Exactly. We're not doing child labor here.
And there's child labor laws as well you got to be aware of in each state. So like there's a lot of stuff that goes into that conversation.
Yeah. And to your point, when you think about it in a reasonable standpoint, like then it boils down to some of those, whatever those things you see on online about how much you can pay your kid. It becomes a little bit more realistic in the long term. So talk to us about just long-term goals that you and your wife have now. I know you've moved down to Texas, and I'm assuming that was probably for healthcare purposes, or maybe to be closer to the resources that are needed. Talk about the long-term financial goals that you and your wife have now.
Sure. So yeah, we moved down to Texas, DFW area for her health, like we said. So doctors close, specialists, top 3 in the nations here. We wanted to be very close to her, and that's like, if I were to put in a nutshell what our goals are, that's probably the biggest goal. Now, from financial perspective, like we have all sorts of different goals. Like we're close to the true financial freedom where we really don't have to work ever again. But like, that's not my personality at all. I like to work. I like to give back. That's who I am. So we don't, from a financial goal perspective, it's interesting. This is a good question as well, because there's always levels to this game, and you can always move up the ladder and make more money. But at what cost, and what is the bigger drive behind that dollar? Because if you're hitting financial freedom numbers, wasn't that the goal to begin with? And so my thought is, like, could I make more money? Am I going to deny more money? Absolutely not. Like, I'm not going to say no, because I think I can give it away to better causes, which is another financial goal. We're going to donate $1 million to Dravet Syndrome, and that's a big goal we have right now. But in general, like, I don't know if there's really a financial number we're trying to reach after our 2.5 total. Like 2.5 in the brokerage is kind of the goal. Outside of that, man, like, it's just like, I want to give back and build, financial freedom. Obviously, teach people how to do exactly what we've done. Share my story online. Build off the Budgetdog brand. Expand the brand and stuff like that, for the sake of like helping people, not necessarily just like getting more money, because that's kind of like, it seems meaningless, honestly. Like, I think there's a lot of like talk on TikTok and Twitter and Instagram of like, just make more money for the sake of making more money. Never been driven by that, because like, if I was, I'd probably live in a bigger house and have a bigger, faster car. But like, I don't. Like, they're very everyday cars, everyday houses, like nothing crazy here. And that stuff's never driven me. There's no value in that to me. Not to say it's wrong, not to say like, hey, somebody that goes get a nice car, big house, is doing it the wrong way. It's just, for us, it's kind of meaningless. So yeah. Logan shifted our perspective in a big way. But at the same time, we never really had the desire to go buy more stuff. I even tweeted the other day, I said that I never really had the urge to go buy fancy stuff. Never really was a thing. Even my dad makes fun of me. He's like, are you going to go buy, like, get something nice for yourself? I'm like, I have the life I want to live, like exactly how I want to live. And that was the ultimate goal. So that's kind of where we're at. So as far as like money wise, it's more so a goal to give versus a goal to receive. And if we hit that, awesome. I know we will with time. We're at 7% of the goal right now, 70,000 of $1 million. And outside of that, man, it's just a matter of focusing on the family.
I love that. Yeah, I've talked to some researchers, some people who've looked into wealth for generations, and it feels like it gets to a point where you've built up enough that much more after that fact isn't going to move the needle of your happiness or your joy, your family that much more. Would you agree?
110%. Like, and I've experienced it with the income growth. It's like, when I can remember specifically when we made, let's call it 92,000, we jumped to like 137, I think, specifically year over year or whatever, with like income growth and, side hustle. That felt significant. Like, that was a big jump. But once you jump like past a certain level, and I don't know, I think it's different for everybody. I know there's studies like after 100,000, doesn't really matter. I think it's different for everybody, but there is law of diminishing returns with dollars. Like, there really truly is. Like, what type of lifestyle do you want? What are your goals? And then how much money do you need to get there? A lot of people, I think it's more the younger generation, they're like, well, I want the fancy private jet, and I want this New York penthouse. It's like, maybe that's what you want, but is that what you really, really want? And have to ask yourself, because does that really make you happy? Does that actually bring happiness to you, contentment to you? And I think that's the meaning of life, is essentially figuring out what that means for you.
Absolutely. Well, you've got some great resources out there, and you're giving back quite a bit. Tell us about your new book and where people can connect with you.
Sure. So Roadmap to Financial Freedom is coming out April 8th. And we have an Amazon link in the show notes below. The goal behind that book is to show exactly my journey. So obviously I have the Academy, Budgetdog Academy, where we walk through a 6-month journey. That's really, the book is going to show you that exact journey. So over a 6-month period, my students have gone through, tools, resources, the whole roadmap essentially. And it makes it easy, because finance should be easy. And I think there's a lot of like jargon online that's like confusing intentionally. But at the end of the day, it should be simplified. And so the roadmap to financial freedom, the whole purpose of that is to drive simplicity to your financial goals.
Absolutely. We've had an opportunity to chat with Brennan over the years, and he's proof of the simple path. Yes, continue to grow your wealth. Obviously, a lot of it's coming in the stock market and his real estate. A lot of the other things out there might just be noise for you all. So check out his new book. Brennan, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you so much.
Hey, if you're inspired to build your family's net worth after hearing Brennan's story, do so with a free tool like Empower's Net Worth Tracker. My wife and I use this tool during our net worth building journey to go from a negative $50,000 net worth all the way towards $1 million in just 10 years. Check out that tool in the links below, or click the link in our video description. Again, that tool is free. If you want to hear more inspiring net worth stories, stick around for this next video.